The mansion stood like a crown of stone beneath the pale glow of the moon, its golden gates shining as if mocking the sorrow that weighed within. To the world outside, it was a palace of splendor, a fortress of wealth where chandeliers glittered like frozen stars, where marble floors gleamed like mirrors, and where art worth millions lined the walls. But to those who lived inside, it was no palace at all. It was a prison of grief, where silence did not bring peace, but instead carried the heavy ache of loss. The widowed millionaire, once celebrated in society for his power and brilliance, now drifted through his own halls like a shadow. His wife, the woman who had been his anchor and his joy, was gone, taken from him too soon, only weeks after giving birth to their twins. Since that day, the mansion had known no laughter. Its corridors, once alive with warmth, echoed only with cries that split the night. Every evening, without fail, the twins wailed as though the absence of their mother weighed on their tiny souls. Their screams filled the nursery, spilled into the hallways, climbed the staircases, and echoed across the entire house. No doctor could explain it, no nurse could soothe it, no nanny could quiet it. The millionaire spared no expense in seeking a cure. He summoned specialists, bought the finest cradles, ordered the most expensive lullaby machines from across the seas. Nothing worked. Night after night, the children screamed until dawn, their faces red, their little fists clenched, their small bodies trembling with exhaustion. The mansion staff whispered among themselves that the house had been cursed, that the children cried not for comfort, but for the mother they would never see again. And as the days stretched into months, the man who once commanded empires crumbled under the weight of sleeplessness. His shoulders bent, his eyes grew dark and sunken, and his once proud stride became the weary shuffle of a man drowning in despair. He could control markets, he could bend rivals to their knees, but he could not silence the cries of his children. The servants grew restless too. Some left quietly, unwilling to endure the nightly torment. Those who remained learned to tiptoe through the mansion, praying for even a brief moment of silence. Yet silence never came. The mansion, once filled with the sound of music and laughter, had become a house that never slept, a place where grief walked like a ghost in every room. And then, into this house of sorrow came someone no one noticed at first, a poor maid. She arrived quietly, carrying little more than a small cloth bag, and eyes that revealed a life of hardship. Her hands were calloused from years of labor, her clothes were plain and faded, her shoes worn from miles walked. She had been hired for the simplest of tasks, to sweep, to dust, to polish. She spoke little, keeping her head bowed, her presence so humble that most of the staff barely remembered her name. Yet though she was invisible to others, she carried within her a heart shaped by struggle. She knew hunger, she knew nights when comfort was a luxury, and she knew what it felt like to cry alone in the dark. And each evening, as she worked in the vast, echoing corridors, she heard the cries of the twins seeping through the doors. At first, she ignored them. It was not her place. She was only a maid, but the sound cut deep into her, pulling at the strings of memory. She remembered her own childhood, when her mother would hold her close and hum a simple tune to calm her. Those cries reminded her of herself, and her soul could not forget the pain of a child longing for love. One night, the storm outside was fierce. Rain lashed against the windows, thunder rolled through the skies, and the mansion groaned under the weight of sorrow. Inside the nursery, the twins' cries were louder than ever, shaking the very walls. The millionaire sat hunched in a chair beside them, his head buried in his hands, his robe disheveled, his face hollow from exhaustion. He looked like a king dethroned, stripped of power by the simple, relentless cries of his own children. He had tried everything, rocking them, begging them, even praying for mercy. Nothing worked. His heart ached, his pride shattered. The staff lingered far away, unwilling to enter the nursery. But at the doorway stood the poor maid, clutching a rag, her heart pounding in her chest. She looked at the children, tiny, helpless, their fists clenched, their cries shaking with desperation. Something inside her broke. She could not stand by any longer. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Sir, may I try?" The millionaire lifted his head, startled. His tired eyes narrowed in disbelief. She, a maid? What could she possibly do that the finest experts in the world had failed to accomplish? His pride urged him to dismiss her, to send her away. But in that moment, desperation spoke louder than pride. The twins' cries faltered slightly at the sound of her voice, their little eyes drifting toward her. Against reason, against logic, against everything he had believed in, the millionaire gave her a tired nod. The maid stepped forward, her hands trembling, her heart racing. She removed her gloves, her rough fingers brushing gently against the children's flushed cheeks. Then slowly, softly, she began to hum. It was not a famous lullaby or a song of grandeur. It was a tune from her childhood, raw and simple, yet filled with warmth. It was a song her mother used to sing when nights were cold, when hunger gnawed, when fear pressed close. Her voice was untrained, but it carried something greater than skill. Love. The nursery changed. The storm still howled outside, but inside a miracle was unfolding. The cries began to soften. The fists unclenched. The trembling slowed. Within minutes, the wails turned into whimpers, the whimpers into sighs, and finally, silence. The twins drifted into slumber, their tiny bodies relaxing as peace wrapped around them like a blanket. The maid did not stop. She continued to hum, her hand resting gently on them, as though guarding their dreams from sorrow. The millionaire sat frozen, his breath caught in his chest. Tears filled his eyes, falling freely down his weary face. He had begged doctors, paid fortunes, prayed endlessly, and none had succeeded. Yet here, a poor maid, with nothing but her voice and her heart, had achieved what wealth could not. For the first time since his wife's death, the mansion was quiet. Not with emptiness, but with peace. He wept openly, his pride broken, his soul humbled by the simplest of truths. Love cannot be bought. From that night onward, the maid was no longer invisible. She became the light of the mansion. The twins would only sleep when she was near, soothed by her lullabies. The servants whispered about her, calling it magic, calling it a blessing. The millionaire, once hollow and defeated, began to heal. He ate again, he smiled again, he even dared to laugh softly as he watched his children rest. The mansion, once cursed with grief, began to glow again. The chandeliers sparkled more brightly, the walls no longer echoed with sorrow, and the very air seemed lighter. Every night, the millionaire sat in the nursery, watching her sing. Her voice did not only soothe the children, it soothed him too. For the first time in months, he felt less alone. He found himself studying her, not as a maid, but as someone extraordinary. He saw the strength in her humility, the richness in her simplicity. One evening, unable to contain his thoughts, he asked, "Why do you do this?" She looked at him with quiet eyes and replied, "Because they need it." Her words struck him deeply. There was no demand, no expectation, no pride, only love. In that moment, the millionaire realized how much he had changed. Once upon a time, he had measured his worth in wealth, in power, in possessions. The weight of his empire had defined him, the size of his fortune had given him pride, and the admiration of society had made him believe he had everything. But now, as he sat quietly watching his children sleep peacefully for the first time in months, he saw the truth he had missed all his life. The greatest treasure was not gold, nor land, nor jewels. It was love, the same love his late wife had given him so selflessly, the same love his children had been crying for, the same love this poor maid had offered, without asking for anything in return. He studied her from across the nursery. Her clothes were plain, her hands rough from endless labor, her voice untrained and simple. Yet there was something in her presence that no luxury could buy. Affection bloomed in his heart, not sudden like a lightning strike, not dramatic like a storm, but gentle and steady like the rising of the morning sun. Each night that followed he noticed more. The way her eyes softened when she looked at the twins. The way she never rushed, never complained, never sought praise. The way she treated the mansion not as a place of work, but as a home she was determined to keep alive. Slowly, he no longer saw her as a servant. He saw her as the one who had rescued his family from the pit of despair. Time passed, and the mansion healed completely. Where once the corridors had echoed with cries, now they rang with laughter. The twins grew stronger, their tiny footsteps racing across marble floors, their giggles brightening every shadowed corner. The staff, once frightened and burdened by endless nights of screaming, began to smile again. They no longer whispered of curses behind closed doors. Instead, they spoke of blessings, of miracles, of the maid whose lullabies had brought peace back to the house. The millionaire himself was reborn. No longer the hollow man crushed by grief, he rediscovered the joy of fatherhood. He cherished every smile on his children's faces, every soft sigh of sleep, every new day that no longer felt like a burden, but like a gift. And at the heart of this transformation was her, the maid. She had given not jewels, not riches, not anything money could buy, but her heart. She had filled the emptiness left behind by tragedy with the simplest yet most powerful act of all, love. Her lullabies became legend in the house. Even long after the children outgrew them, the staff remembered how those humble songs had broken the curse of sleepless nights. Her voice, though plain to others, became the sound of salvation. Her presence, once unnoticed, became a treasure the mansion could not live without. And though the millionaire still missed his wife deeply, he carried a quiet comfort within him. He knew, he truly believed, that she would have been grateful. She would have thanked the maid for giving their children what even he, with all his power, could not give, the warmth of a mother's love, freely offered by another's heart. Years later, the memory of those nights still lingered like a soft echo in his soul. Even as his hair turned grey and the world changed around him, the silence of that first peaceful night remained carved into his heart. He would often sit by the nursery window, now long abandoned, and recall the cries that once haunted every corridor. He would remember the endless footsteps pacing across marble floors, the desperate prayers whispered into the dark. And he would remember the moment when everything shifted, not because of fortune, not because of doctors, not because of power, but because of a poor maid's compassion. The widowed millionaire's twin could not sleep, night after night. The mansion had been drowning in sorrow. Yet with a single act of love, a lullaby born from hardship, a gentle touch shaped by empathy, the curse of sleeplessness was broken. The maid had not been trained, she had not been prepared, and she had no riches to her name. But she had what no one else had offered, the sincerity of a heart that understood pain. In her song lived the voice of a mother they had lost, the comfort of a home they thought they would never know again, and, through her, the twins discovered rest, the mansion discovered peace, and the millionaire discovered a truth money had hidden from him, that sometimes the richest treasure is not found in vaults or banks, but in the selfless act of caring for another. And so, the story stands as a reminder for us all that sometimes the greatest miracles are not performed by the powerful, but by the overlooked. That sometimes the humblest hands carry the deepest healing. That love, when given freely, has the strength to mend what even wealth cannot touch. Years later, the legend of the maid lived on inside that mansion. Her lullabies were never forgotten, whispered by the staff, carried in the laughter of the twins, honored by the father who had once lost hope. And though the millionaire still missed his wife with a longing that never faded, he knew in his soul she would have been grateful. For in the maid's kindness, their children had received the gift of a mother's love once more. The story is not just about sorrow or wealth or loss. It is about love reborn in the unlikeliest of places. It is about a broken man who found healing not in gold, but in compassion. And it is about the truth that endures through every age, that the richest gift in this world is not wrapped in gold, but given through love. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories, because in the end, compassion is not just a virtue, it is the greatest treasure of all.